The next committee meeting will be September 21st. I have an item to add to the agenda as number 6A, that's signage on the Fraser River. Carol has an item for in-camera. Anybody else at this stage? Okay.
Yeah,
Alexa?
Yeah, it's Alexa here. Yeah, I'd like to add a referral on noise bylaw.
Noise bylaw, okay. That'll be 6B.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had one more, but
And we'll add
lost my
anything
sheet.
else that any member has after that. Okay, our first item is the monthly property activity report. And we got Carly Williams. The report is there for information. Do we have questions, Carly, at this stage? Hand up, wave. Okay, Andy, and then Michael. Okay, you're on.
Thank you, and through the chair. Just on a couple quick questions. On page 9, what is the boulevard call for service? What does that refer to, the boulevard?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. Sorry, that's the boulevard maintenance bylaw. We've just simply shortened the labels for the sake of this report.
Sure. All right. Thanks. And just on page 10, and sorry, like this is really the first community safety meeting that I have actually prepared for in any way, because the other one was on short notice. But regarding the soil removal and mediation on page 10, you know, I imagine that's quite an expensive process. So on page 10, it mentions, for instance, 19740 River Road was denied because of an outstanding compliance issue dating back to the early 2000s. So I wondered how many of the non-compliance issues, and you've listed a few there, are resolved successfully without having to resort to court or a lawsuit. And when that follow-up is done, you know, what would be the legal costs, and do the people that are in violation usually get tagged for our legal costs? And do we have any of those before the courts right now in terms of lawsuits? Because depending on the scale of the project, that could be quite a huge amount of money and quite a huge task, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, there's a few questions there, so I'm going to just try to remember them all. We currently only have one soil issue in front of the court. It's not listed on here. It's on River Road, and that is actually with Supreme Court. So we had council approval to start an injunction, and so we are proceeding through that process. These others have not gone to court. Some of them have tickets, so we will write. We primarily rely on tickets or an injunction for soil bylaw files. However, over the last year or so, we've had great success just by issuing removal orders and having people in compliance. And you can see that with this list. We've issued removal orders and people have complied. The site on 19740 River Road was quite unusual. We weren't aware, City of Richmond, of any compliance issues, but when it wound its way through the process to the ALC, they found an old enforcement issue that predated even the owners of this property. And so I believe the owners are working with the ALC to address that. It's just that they weren't aware of it. So it wasn't necessarily through any fault of their own. So we anticipate that getting sorted out, but we will wait for a decision from the ALC.
Okay, and just one more question. Just on page 15, when I'm looking at the top patrolled parks, I just wondered, how do you determine which will be your top patrolled park? Is there like an analysis of calls for service, or is it based on complaints, or just the experience of the staff?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, that you're referring to the next report. That's not my report. That would be Ms. Lloyd to answer that question for you.
Oh.
Yeah, you went page ahead. Yeah, you're on the next page.
Sorry,
Andy.
thanks, Carly.
You okay?
I'm okay.
That's
Thanks.
Your enthusiasm. Okay, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, thank you very much. Through the chair, I have what I hope to be very short, pointed questions. The two new bylaw officers, bylaw enforcement officers that are being hired, it refers to that in the report. Will they be considered general bylaw enforcement officers, or specifically trained and targeting infractions with housing arrangements?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, these two positions were approved by council specifically for the short-term rental program. So their workload will comprise primarily of investigating potential illegal short-term rentals. However, hiring these positions, we do hire based on the same qualifications of all the bylaw officers that do property use work. So they will be qualified to do work on all of the different files in this report, for example, but the work assigned to them and the reason for the approval of the positions was to do with short-term rentals.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The next question I had through the chair to staff. In the report, it mentions that the list of 7 stop work orders. Could you speak to any trends in those 7?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we don't notice trends. The trends we notice, I suppose, are people starting, they bring a small amount of fill on, and we're getting better at detecting that early on. And so we are just intervening early. So that is something we've learned to do better and be more efficient. I think removing preload after a construction is something that we also have to be aware of. But as you can see, we're getting compliance just with a first interaction and education. So I would say, in my opinion, it's trending in the right direction.
Perfect. Thank you. Through the chair to staff, my third question related to the report is it was referred in there as the city has now taken on the responsibility that used to be Vancouver Coastal Health, such as noise. Is there anything else of note to share with us about challenges or needs from the department as a result of the takeover beyond the additional noise complaints?
To the chair to Councillor Wolf, I don't have anything to add to that at the moment.
Great, thank you. And my final question then, if I may, through the chair. As a result of the incident yesterday in Kelowna, where 4 lives were lost as a result of a crane incident, where are our staff in relation to keeping up to the high standard, making sure the safety bar is high, insurance liabilities? Is this something we look at on an annual basis? Are we now in the process of reviewing it as such a close neighboring city has dealt with such tragedy? And I walked down part of 3 Road today and counted over a dozen cranes. Any comments on that? Thanks.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I do not know who regulates cranes. It is certainly not community bylaws. It is potentially building approvals would have that information, though I'm not sure it's a city jurisdictional issue.
Okay, Michael. Okay, Carol?
Thank you very much. I was wondering if you had an update on the Severn Road unsightly premises case.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, Council granted an extension to July 19th, which is this next Monday. And so what Council can expect is bylaw enforcement staff will be on the site at Severn Monday morning to take pictures of the current condition. And Council will receive likely an email due to the tight timeline that will include the pictures from the site visit, so that Council can have up-to-date pictures of the condition. On a visit last week, on Friday, staff visited on Friday, there wasn't a significant change from the first Council meeting, but we will provide another update with pictures Monday morning.
Did you remind the owner that time is ticking?
It's through the chair to Councillor Day, absolutely.
Good. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, anything else on this particular report? Okay, the motion to receive for information, see moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary carried. You. And we've got our next report. It's on page 13, the bylaws for parking enforcement and animal control. Okay, anything to add?
Nothing to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and do you want to get your question answered?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, through the chair, I was just curious, on page 15 with the top patrol parks, I wondered how that is identified. Is there calls for service analysis, or is that based on experience or complaints, or how do you select that?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the top 5 are selected through complaints that we received through calls for service.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good.
You're welcome.
Okay, Alexa.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. It seems to me we made some adjustment to the bylaw regarding bikes on the greenway and in the the crosswalks in and around the railway greenway and a few other places that have the elephant pads, I guess, on them. What have we done to communicate this to the communities, to drivers, to people on bikes? And it's going to come forward, I think, again, when we start having the electric scooters allowed out. So when people can enter the intersection, that kind of stuff. Do we have a communication plan? Can we create a communication plan around this?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the communications to the general public were being handled by the Transportation Department, not being bylaws.
Okay, so send it through Public Works?
Through to Transportation, and I believe that would be Lloyd B.
Okay, because we changed the rule, though, right, on the bylaw side of it. So at some point, the two pieces should work together to get that information out. So
through the chair to Councillor Liu, the bylaw amendment was done by the Transportation Department.
Okay, all right. We'll get it done there then.
Okay. Carol?
Thank you very much. Through the chair to staff, I wanted to ask about on page CS 16, there was only, it looks like 3 incidents of animal in a hot car. Have we sent out any kind of like advertising, promotion, or handouts to remind people of that leaving an animal in a hot car is extremely dangerous for that animal?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes. We do an annual social media, which we currently have in place with all city social media, Facebook and Instagram. We also have pamphlets that are handed out to businesses such as Save on Foods and Costco for people parking their vehicles, and the employees and the staff at both those locations and other locations within the city have been very well received.
That's really good to hear. You know, just at 2 o'clock today, I was over at the McDonald's here on 3 Road, and as I got out of my car, I heard a dog crying, and it was a tiny dog this big in the car right beside me, and the windows were rolled down, but it wasn't bloody well good enough. And so I went into the McDonald's, I went to everybody that was in there and said, do you have a dog in your car? And no one would own up to it. So I went out to the parking lot, I reached in, I opened up the door, and I got that dog out. And fine, of course the alarm went off in the car and everything else, but everyone around me came over and said, I was going to do something, because they could hear it crying as well. Is there a way to give people, or something we could print off the internet, don't leave your dog in a car, and slip it on people's windshields, or hand it to them when we see them come back, or do like I did and save the dog out of that horrible environment? Is there anything that we can print off the city website or?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, we do have a pamphlet that the officers do hand out, the BCSPCA, which they are currently patrolling city parking lots. So in next month's, not only city parking lots, but private lots, in next month's monthly report, it will show a decrease in park patrols, but an increase in patrols of parking lots for dog and hot cars, and handing out pamphlets.
Good. And if the officers spot a dog that is in a car and clearly is, well, why would it not be unhappy? Will they intervene?
We have a process, a standard operating procedure for dog and hot car. The officers have heat guns. They take the temperature of the car. They assess the dog to see if it's in distress. So far, the calls that we've had have not required Richmond Fire Rescue to attend. Who are permitted to open the vehicle and bring the dog out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, thank you very much. Through the chair to staff, just have a couple of question areas. One is there. I think it was last month's report. We heard about dead squirrels in South Arm Park, but then I heard a conflicting end result to that. That it actually wasn't poisoning. That it was a tree product that killed the squirrels. Could staff comment on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it was originally thought of as a naturally occurring resin or something from the tree. And as more patches occurred and when RFR went out the second time, they just did an on-the-spot testing, and it was revealed that a specific compound that could be artificial was present. But when they sent that material to the lab for testing, it turned out to be a natural material. So there was no intentional poisoning. So hence the conflict.
Okay, thanks for that, clarifying that. I'm not sure if that was the reason why South Arm was listed on the page in the report as being a priority to visit, was because perhaps of that thought of poisoning. But anyhow, I'm glad staff are out there surveying that one. The next one, the question I had was about dog parks. Could staff just comment, is there any new dog parks coming in Richmond this summer, or if not, what was the most recent one added, or when will the next one be added? I hear a lot of questions about dog park services and needing more.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I believe the last park that was, I would have to check with the Parks Department who authorizes and opens the parks, the dog parks. I believe it's off River Road and a new development, but I can certainly get the name for you.
Okay, yeah, if committee or council haven't heard that, if there's a new one to be announced, I'd appreciate that. And I have a couple of other questions, but I'll save them for parks on that one. My last question, though, related to, I think, this report. I know you're reporting today on May, and we don't have a meeting next month. Is there any early trends or detections or advance notice that you should, that would benefit maybe today, that maybe there could be a follow-up motion to direct further funds or further resources needed for anything as a result of heat waves? That's what I'm trying to get at here. We've had some major heat waves in June, but we're not going to have the report till September.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, currently, no. We're fully staffed with both parking officers and the SPCA, and there's no need for that at this time.
Okay. Jack, you're on.
Oh, okay. I want to go back to the question on animals in the car, in the hot car. I suppose that we do not send out our bylaw officers looking for dogs in the hot car, right? I think we just act on a complaint basis. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, no. The SPCA officers are currently patrolling both city lots and private lots, such as Lansdowne, Richmond Centre, who are actively looking for dogs in hot cars and putting pamphlets on vehicles. Okay, so reminding individuals.
So once they spot something, a dog in the car, things like that, do they rescue the dog, or do they wait for the owner to come back, and do they give them a ticket, or who has the authority to give a ticket?
Through the chair to Councillor, the SPCA officers have the authority to issue the tickets and do so. The Richmond Fire Rescue is authorized to open the vehicle. The officers do a check on the dog to see if it's showing signs of distress, such as panting or vomiting, and they have a heat gun where they take temperatures of the inside of the vehicle to see if there's an urgency to remove the dog.
I see. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else? Do I see any other hands? None? Okay, a motion to receive for information. Move second, all those in favor, contrary carried. Okay, now our fire rescue monthly activity report. And we got Jim Wishlove giving the report today. You're on. Anything to add?
Thank you,
Highlight,
Councillor.
please. Go ahead.
I have nothing to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions for council.
All right, anything to highlight? Carol?
Yeah, with the heat wave that we just recently went through, were the firefighters tasked to go and help people?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, we did receive calls for service.
I know that we had one of the lowest rates of deaths, sudden deaths in Richmond, probably because of our proximity to the water. But I'm glad to hear that you were able to go out and address those situations. Thank you.
Okay. Andy?
Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. On page 22, I just wondered, when you're talking about emergency support services, what's an example of the assets obtained and a common service to the community in building resilience? What would be a concrete example of that?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, you're speaking about the grant that emergency program staff received, is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. So the grant was applied for on behalf of the city through emergency programs to the Union of BC Municipalities, and we received approximately $20,000. And the equipment that was purchased was mobile computers, mobile power generation, and basically a mobile setup for our staff to go and assist registering evacuees on site rather than forcing them to come to a reception center, be registered, and then further placed into a location for them to be accommodated. All right,
thank you. And one other question, if I can. On page 26, it's almost a 900% increase in medical calls, assessment, breathing, chest pain. Was that directly related to the heat? Because that's a huge increase. So I was just wondering, it does list what it's in relation to, but is there some outlying factor other than perhaps the heat?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, yes, the increase from 2020 to 2021 was directly related to a number of factors. In 2020, fire rescue medical calls for service were reduced significantly as fire rescue crews form part of the emergency medical response process within the metro area, and the risk management model is controlled and administered by BC Emergency Health Services. And at the time, the strategic direction was that fire rescue crews as first responders would not respond to every medical call that they normally would pre-COVID in order to reduce the risk of COVID transmission to that level of responders. Subsequently, our people were responding to less medical calls overall. This year, of course, BCEHS reassessed the risk to COVID and found it was lessened, and so our crews are gradually again responding to the same amount and type of calls that we were pre-COVID.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Michael?